We're here at GNRT, and I'm so excited to be talking with you once again, Bret Kinsella from TELUS Digital. And we spoke not too long ago in Las Vegas at CES. You're here in Washington, D.C. now, and it's a very exciting time. There's been even a few changes since, a few months ago?
Sure. There's been a lot of changes, and I think in the general world, things have changed. For Washington, D.C., it's probably been the most active 60 days of any calendar in the government's history. One of the things they are actually really focused on is the use of AI, which is interesting. But I think in general, the more significant aspect here, to me, is there's been a lot of changes in the AI world as well. I remember at CES, we were talking about thinking models, right? So DeepSeek was about to come out. It had not come out yet. But we had the thinking models from OpenAI that were there, and then we had a couple. At that time, we also were talking about agents a lot, and agents are moving forward as well. And we have a bunch of new models that are out. We have a bunch of new applications that are out. And the one thing about generative AI is that it is moving so quickly. Don't blink.
Right. No, I've been keeping my eyes open this whole time. It's really tough. Let's talk about agentic as well, because we've been talking about AI agents, and we've spoken on this before, but it's really evolving, and people's understanding of it is starting to evolve as well.
Okay, so there's two different concepts here. One is agents, and one is agentic architectures. So an agentic architecture, a software that has an agentic architecture, is basically a software that can call agents. So there are a lot of applications that could call like procedural programs, like you might hear robotic process automation, or just other like executed tasks that you would call. And those are what they call imperative. You have to basically define what you want the application to do. Say, I want you to do this, I want you to do this step, and then that step, and then that step. And you have to anticipate exactly how that's going to go. But an agent or an agentic architecture anticipates that you will have different tools at different times. And you're going to give it what they call a declarative instruction, which is, here's my objective. And then an agent has some latitude to decide how to fulfill that. It might call other tools, it might have certain capabilities itself, but just do that for you. And so you think about an application that you might use as a user, which is agentic. It can call tools and agents for you, but an agent really is something that talks to other machines. It talks to that application that you talk to, and then talks to other machines to execute tasks for you.
I love this. Like, have your people talk to my people. Have your agents talk to my agents. Have your
Sounds
AI
like Hollywood
talk to
all of
my
a sudden.
AI.
Yeah.
Exactly. And there's all these new concepts as well. What I really love about you is that you know all of the new words, but you also know how to define them so that everybody can understand it.
Well, some of that is just history. I've been doing this for 12 or 13 years at this point. And I will tell you, sometimes that's a change, because some new company founder or a big enterprise company CEO or some marketing department will basically use a term, but they'll use it in a different way than we've been using it in that industry for a long time.
Yes.
And so then I have to say, what do you actually mean by that? And agents is one of those examples where people are calling a lot of things agents, which are really just tools. They're old procedural programs that we've had, but they're using them in an agentic architecture. So it's not really an agent, but it's an agentic architecture. With that said, none of that really matters. What I think, one of the things that TELUS Digital that we've really focused on, and one of the reasons that we had 50,000 users at TELUS that are saving $500,000 annually, $50 million in total savings, and at TELUS Digital, another compounding of that. We really focused on what the technology can do. We weren't enamored by the latest model or the latest architecture. We sort of knew what those were going to be, and we knew that the technology, actually even a year ago, was better than it needed to be for most things that we want to use it for. So the question was then, how could we put it all together in a way that people can get value?
And there's a study that you did, because talking about how are people going to value the adoption of AI is really important too.
Yeah, adoption is really interesting. And I mentioned earlier in the talk here at GNRT that I've talked to 4 CIOs of global companies, so big multinationals, since the beginning of the year, so the last 2 months. And every one of them have asked me, how are you getting so many people in your company to adopt? Because they have tens of thousands of licenses, they have access to some of these technologies, and they just have hundreds of users. 5%, 10%, 15% adoption. And yet these tools are so much better than anything they've had in the past. And so what is the problem? Well, a lot of it's just behavior change. A lot of it's making the tools not just available, but also really accessible to the frontline workers. You think about the way IT has been adopted in the past. It's almost like the druids in the IT department or the innovation department. Look at all the new technologies and then like, you could use this or you could use that. They play this curation role. But with generative AI, it's so accessible to end users because you can just talk. Everybody knows how to talk. And it'll customize it for you. It'll give you your answer. So if you give it to them and you provide them with the ability to customize it a little bit, they can just do the work themselves. They don't have to wait for the druids to tell them, what the weather's going to be next week or what they can use. They can basically just use it, get value, and I think it's really important for employees because everybody's under pressure. It's a very competitive environment. Everybody's challenged. They want to grow. A lot of times companies have had layoffs, but they're asking someone to do a job and a half or 2 jobs that they used to do. And the people that I know, that I work with, they want to do a good job. And if you look at generative AI, it helps them do the job better.
I think a lot of people's holdback is the safety and security part of it, and that's something that you're addressing.
100%. We think about sort of 4 key adoption barriers to generative AI. So, flexibility, agility, control, and trust. And when I think about trust, there's a couple of things that people are concerned about. If you think about generative AI, it's a probabilistic technology. So if we think about deterministic versus probabilistic, I know what the answer is going to be. If I ask a question or I click a button, I always know the same answer is going to come up. But probabilistic technology, it's based on math. You might ask the same question and get a different answer because there's different context or something that's changed. And that creates a little bit of concern for a lot of people. The other thing that can lead to is people say, hey, there's new security risks. There might be new risks around AI safety. And so these are things we have to address, and we don't have tools from our past work with applications that actually address this because it's an unbounded input. You can ask it anything you want, and it's really an unbounded output. Based on what you want, it can look at all the information it has, all the things that it can do, and give you a customized solution. But you don't know what that's necessarily going to be ahead of time. That's one of the magical things about it. People had bad experiences with chatbots because they could only do 7 things, right? And if I wanted number 8, I couldn't get it done. Now these systems are much more agile because they understand much more and they can really help users. But at the same time, that opens up safety and security risks. And so that's one of the things that a lot of large enterprises have sort of stepped back and said, hey, we need to make sure that our risk is properly mitigated, that we actually understand what the vulnerabilities are. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. You can do that with guardrails that intervene while you're in the conversation. You can do that with vulnerability detection, like we have FuelX Fortify, like automatically identifies vulnerabilities. You can do that with other governance capabilities. You can do it with training. There's lots of different ways you can do it, but it is something that we have to address, and it's very different than what we've had in the past. So we had to create new tools to solve problems that we'd solved before, but it's a new paradigm.
Really going back a little bit, the reason that you're kind of where you are right now is because you guys have been doing this for a while. You've been doing this for a while. Tell me a little bit about the adoption story, the origin story, if you will.
Yeah, I think, I've been in the industry a long time, so I understood expert systems, I understood convolutional neural networks and how that led to natural language processing and assistants like Alexa and Siri. And then when we got to generative AI, I had that context to see what was different. So I think that's been helpful for me. But if I tell the TELUS story, it's actually really interesting. So Hesham Fahmy, the CIO there, said, I want this organization to have a lot of benefit from generative AI. They'd already been doing for analytics, like machine learning models and things like that. But he saw ChatGPT come out and said, I want this to have a big impact. And he said, however, I don't want to be tied into just one model maker or one cloud, because I know that there's a lot of asynchronous innovation going on. I also want to basically empower the person who uses it to be able to customize it themselves. I don't want them to have to come to my department as the IT leader, waiting for a developer before they can get some benefit. He didn't have enough people to serve all the needs. In fact, at one point in the first quarter, of 2023, when he was doing generative AI work, he had 75 different requests from business users who wanted something. Like, these were other executives, his peers. By the end of the following month, 30 days later, he had 150. But then he rolled out something so that people could self-service, and they didn't need the developers, and they could get benefit right away. And so that's been great. And this idea of a platform where we can have 25 custom applications, and then we have different applications that are like packaged, that like you can create your own co-pilot, or you can help a contact center agent do their job better, or you can train contact center agents, or you can train a technician, or a technician can do troubleshooting faster. Those are the applications that then really turn it around, because the technology layer, it's really just enablement, addressing those adoption barriers, but then the next step is having those applications, and that makes all the difference.
Last question. You're here at Generate, brand new event.
Yes.
And you're here with a message.
Well, I think there's two things. One is hands-on. This is a learn by doing market. And so what I like about Generate right now is we had talks in the morning, but now we're moving into workshops. And I think this is the important thing, is that everyday users just need to get more at-bats, as we would say in baseball. They need to try it more. And I think the more they try it, the more they'll develop the right frame of reference in order to get more value out of it. It's kind of like back in the day when the internet was new, people had to be on the internet to understand what it could do. Otherwise, they were just sort of trying to replicate old models. But then they're like, oh, now I get it. Now I can do this, and I can do this change. So I think that's one of them. And the next one is use cases. So when I try it, then I apply it. I apply it to something that's a problem for me today. It might be a mundane task. It might be a super complex task. It might be something I couldn't do before. I needed 4 people to do it over 3 days. Now I can do it in an hour. That's what we need. Is the use cases are really the things that are driving adoption.
Bret, thank you so much.
Lindsey, thank you.